Okay, hello everybody here. We are on behalf of the Baltic Science Network. I have the pleasure to welcome you to our session today. We are very pleased that so many of you have came. We were thinking that we were sitting alone here in the last hour of the forum, but we have a lot of friends, as I can see. Very good, very good. And in the next 50 minutes, we will discuss about, is it sensible to have a macro-regional dimension in higher education, science and research policy in the Baltic Sea area? And our whole session will be moderated by Baiba, so I will hand over the micro to her.
Thanks a lot, Klaus. Very good afternoon. Pleasure to see you. Although one half a bit empty, but it is fine. I think there is a certain balance. Very warmly welcome to this panel discussion that will be very short, though we will address the question on do we need macro-regional dimension in higher education, science and research policy in this macro region. We will share few views on framework conditions for macro-regional dimension and specifically in mobility of researchers and transnational cooperation. You may know about the Science Network, Baltic Science Network. If you don't know yet, Klaus will tell you more a bit later. Let me only to say that this is one of the flagships, the macro-regional project within the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. It is done under policy area on education. This is only the first step, as also project owners hope. It's just the initial stage to establish something more sustainable. What we will do today during these 48 minutes we have still left is I will introduce all my dear speakers. Then we will have 3 very concise interventions, presentations. No, I will not fall. Then we will have short discussion. Unfortunately, I apologize in advance. We may not have time for opening floor for all of you. Let's see. And then we will close the session formulating answer by panelists to the question placed for the panel discussion. So let me first to say who will be those who will take seats here. And I will ask my dear panelists just to stand up, because when we will have presentations, that it will be more comfortable for them to see them. So first we are having Ms. Riitta Mustonen. She has very long experience in strategic analysis, science policy, international cooperation. She comes from Turku University, where she is Director of Development. In her responsibilities, the topics are strategic development and research funding, innovation and entrepreneurship, as well as societal interactions. And in this panel, she represents one of many partners of Baltic Science Network. Thanks and welcome. Our other panelist is Jelena Angelis. She is a Deputy Director of Technopolis Group, Baltics, and Senior Consultant in the company, and especially in the fields of research and innovation policy. Jelena's experience covers interrelated topics of research and innovation, research infrastructures, performance research, higher education systems and entrepreneurships. Even more, she has been involved in many of assignments regarding mobility. And Technopolis also analyzed Nord Plus and Nord Forsk, which are also many times referred in the context of Baltic science cooperation. Anders Bergström is having very, very extensive international experience. He has been starting with project development and implementation, later moving also to program management. Since 2013, he became policy area coordinator within the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. And under this policy area, as already mentioned, Baltic Science Link is implemented. Thanks, Anders. And last but not least, I'm very happy to introduce to you Klaus von Lepel. He is having experience in government offices. Klaus, I let you also to sit down, thanks. And He has been dealing with European and Baltic affairs since very long ago. And since October 2012, he took a position of Head of Department for Research and Innovation Policy, European and International Affairs at Hamburg Ministry of Science, Research and Equalities. It is very important to mention that Klaus is leader of this project that is now starting and of the process that will continue later. And he is also representing organizers for this panel. We will have, and we are having, Raquel somewhere. She's there. She will be drawing what we are talking about, and I'm sure later you will see her lovely drawings. So maybe we move on, and I let you to introduce Baltic Science Network, and then Katariina will tell us about the trends, facts and figures in research mobility. Welcome. There's always some surprise coming. Cannot be different. Great.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Do I need to grab the microphone? Probably better. Yeah. Thank you very much. I have the pleasure now to introduce to you the Baltic Science Network within 5 minutes. So we have to hurry up. So what is it? What is the Baltic Science Network all about? Actually, as Baiba already said, we are a pretty new network. We are just established in the spring this year, and we had our political kickoff in June. So we are really in the beginning of the whole thing. But we have a very ambitious aim. We want to develop this network into the leading transnational forum for higher education, science and research cooperation in the Baltic Sea area. In order to do so, we have decided that we want to be a political network, which means members of this network are mostly relevant transnational, national, regional policy actors from the Baltic Sea region in this field of science and research policy. And the aim of the whole network is to create springboard targeted multilateral activities for our universities, for our research organizations and for our researchers. So, why do we need a Baltic Science Network? If you have a look on the Baltic Sea region, and we have experienced that in the last 2 days, everybody is connected with everybody here. You have so many networks, you have so many organizations who are dealing with transnational cooperation in the Baltic Sea region. But one region actually was missing, or one area, one policy area actually was missing when we started our analysis. And it was quite astonishingly, it was the field of science and research policy. You don't have a network which brings together the ministries and the key political actors in this region. You even don't have a network which covers all universities or all the research organizations from the region. That was the reason why we said, okay, maybe it might be sensible to have also something like a Baltic Science Network. Today, science policy is mainly pursued on national, or in some countries like Germany on regional level, and on the European level. But we believe that the missing link is the transnational, the macro-regional level. And we want to add this to the field via the Baltic Science Network. So what are our main objectives? Why are we doing that? First of all, we want to develop and implement transnational programs for our universities and research organizations. We want to support them in their work, in their research work, in their educational work, and in their ambitions to create innovative ideas. Secondly, we would like to widen Baltic Sea region multilateral cooperation. And in order to do so, we have a couple of ideas what kind of instruments and tools are needed for that. And in the end, all these things will fit together, and we would like to see in 3 years' time something what we would call a Baltic Sea science policy. And this Baltic Sea Science Policy is, on the one hand side, a macro-regional one, by definition. But on the other hand, we also have to bring in these macro-regional ideas into national, regional, and even European political arenas. So, in order to make Baltic Sea science policy, you need the people who are doing science policy in their national states. So you can see from our table who is involved in Baltic Science Network that we have the ministries from more or less all the countries around the Baltic Sea in our network. Then we have some representative universities here, like Turku University or St. Petersburg University with us. And last but not least, but very important in the middle, we have all the key actors in transnational cooperation which are active in the Baltic Sea also on board. That are, first of all, the Council of Baltic Sea States, then the EU Strategy for the Baltic Sea Region, and since last week also Nordpost, the Council of Nordic Ministers. And in order to be integrative and not to be competitive, we decided that we want to integrate existing structures, integrate existing structures which are already existing there. Therefore, we also have the two major university networks included in our networks, the Baltic Sea Region University Network and the Baltic University Program. And we also have the existing research program in the region, the bonus program on board. So, and of course we are not a lonesome cowboy in the desert. We are interwoven in the existing structures of Baltic Sea cooperation. We are a major project of the Council of Baltic Sea States Science, Research and Innovation Agenda. We are already, after 3 months, getting the flagship status in the EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region. And last but not least, and very important one, we got the funding from Indirect for the first 3 years for our project. So all in all, we are a common platform for closer policy cooperation. But what is the other added value of Baltic Science Network? I think what might differ in our project compared with other Interact projects is that we are not having in a normal Interact project you have a problem, you are gathering stakeholders, they are discussing, they are producing some kind of solution. In the end is a policy paper, and then they hand in the policy paper to the political decision makers, and in a lot of cases nothing happens afterwards. Our idea was to say, okay, we have to incorporate the political decision makers just right from the beginning. They have to be involved in the already on the ideas level, and then in the level where we start to debate about what kind of solutions do we need, and in the process of producing solutions, because solutions which are produced by themselves are much more likely to be implemented afterwards in national and regional policy. So that is at least the idea. We will see in 3 years' time if we succeed with that. But okay, we will have a look. Yeah, now I have told a lot about the structures. Now the last slide is about the actions. We have been sitting together in a brainstorming seminar in Hamburg, and then we decided, okay, we have to focus on, we can't cover the whole science policy areas, or every area. That is simply not possible. We have to concentrate on areas where there's an added value by transnational collaboration. And we came out with 5 areas where we believe that these areas might be sensible for a closer transnational cooperation. You can see them: widening participation, mobility, research and innovation excellence, best practice learning, and of course also important joint lobbying on EU and international level. And today we will have a closer look on research and innovation excellence and on mobility. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Klaus. Yes, Katariina, please. Katariina will introduce to us trends, figures, topics about the research mobility.
Okay, so on the one hand, to have a bit food for the discussion, we decided to show one of our working areas, some figures, and also to show you that we have really started already very concrete work. So I also try to do this in 5 minutes. I just have to open this one here.
It is a bit of rush, but...
Yes. So I will give you some ideas or trends to the researcher mobility in the Baltic Sea region, and after me Klaus will talk again, and he will talk about transnational cooperation in research and science in the Baltic Sea region. We have just carried out a study to this topic, research mobility, and I have put some challenges and trends together.
We would like to see something on the screen, if possible.
You would see already.
Because I see it there, it looks good.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So there are some general considerations I want to address. So it is not easy to put together facts and data to this topic because there are not so many statistics on the one hand. On the other hand, they are probably not comparable, the numbers. So there are insufficiencies when analyzing researcher mobility. There is no clear definition. What is research mobility? Is it if I go for 1 month, or do I have to stay half a year? Lack of standardized reporting systems at national and international levels. Also, it's not possible to consider researchers in private companies. There is no statistic at all. And data are either not available or hardly comparable. So, but coming to some trends we have found out. So, for example, countries with close linguistic and cultural ties tend to have high mutual exchange rates of researchers. Of course, it's easier to go there. In countries which border each other also tend to have extraordinary high mutual exchange rates. And there is throughout BSR an overall east-west mobility flow, which is clearly evident. And there is, additionally to this east-west trend, there is also a one-sided south-north mobility flow of researchers. In many BSR countries, flows of researcher mobility are not balanced, at least not at the level of individual mobility partners. So for many countries, the overall mobility balance is negative. There are more outgoing than incoming researchers. Only Denmark and Norway have positive mobility balances in the whole region. And among all BSR countries, Denmark is the one with the highest return mobility of mobile researchers, which is 30%, followed by Sweden, 19%, Germany, only 18%. But when we have a look to Finland, for example, it's much lower, it's 8%. Poland has only 3% return mobility. The most important mobility partner for many BSR states within the region is Germany, followed by the other nations mentioned here, states like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Russia, and Poland. No, it's for these countries it is the most important mobility partner. So main mobility partners for many countries are located outside the BSR. Even if we have very excellent infrastructure, research infrastructure in the BSR. And mobility patterns may differ at lower and higher career levels. So the more advanced the researcher's career stage is, the more the decision about the destination is excellency driven. Like it doesn't matter which country is, I want to have excellent research infrastructure and my excellent colleagues there. So brain drain and brain gain is not just a question of quantities, but also of qualities. So we want, of course, to have the mobility, but within excellent researchers. So that was my part. I will open your slides then.
Okay, we would very much appreciate if then the other intervention could be done quick. Just to have any chance to have any question.
I can move the cursor.
Okay. So, Klaus, you will address the question of transnational cooperation then, now. I think, though it was already quite clear that it requires transnational cooperation also when defining themes within the project. Okay.
Okay, I will go on. As you can obviously see, I'm not Julia. She is still trying to catch a flight to Stockholm, which is today seems to be a problem actually. So I jumped just in for her and I will present her findings. compared with these mobility figures, I have to say this is really only food for thought. For the mobility, we tasked the researcher who was looking on the figures for 3 or 4 months. These figures which I will present you now, they are mainly based from the ECODA database, where all the project's data is collected from Horizon 2020. And this work has been done by Julia and then our ECODA database expert in our ministry for 2 or 3 days. So it's just to give a spotlight. So we're looking, our question about who is cooperating actually with whom in the Baltic Sea region. And in order to analyze this, we were looking on the number of projects, on the number of organizations from the Baltic Sea region countries, and on the number of participations. There is a difference between organization and participations. For example, if you have one university which is cooperating in 5 projects, it is 1 organization but 5 participations, obviously. So, and we have in this database of Horizon 2020, Norway and Iceland are integrated, and somehow also Russia comes in, but I don't think that they're on equal footing with the other countries. But I'm not 100% sure. So, what are the figures? Obviously, if you're looking at absolute figures, it's pretty clear. Germany has the most projects in Horizon 2020. Okay, it's simply because we are the biggest country in the region, followed by Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Poland. But if you relate these figures with the number of inhabitants, we already have a completely different picture. It's Iceland who is on the front, and Germany somewhere in between on the lower ranks. So it very clearly shows that you can prove a lot of different things with the same figures. Then we were looking who is actually cooperating with who. That means we were looking, in order to explain this table, we were looking, for example, if you take the first line, we were looking on all Horizon projects from Germany and then having a look how many partners in these projects are coming from the Baltic Sea region. The numbers are not too impressive, I have to say, at least for Germany. Take the first one, we have in all German Horizon 2020 projects, we have, for example, only 4% coming from Sweden, 3% coming from Denmark, 2% of the researchers coming from Finland, and so on and so on. If you're looking on the colors, which means high intensity of cooperation are red, and then comes orange, then yellow, then green, and afterwards blue and gray, but you can't really see that on the screen so good. It becomes a little bit, what is pretty clear also in this table is of course that the most important cooperation partner for all the Baltic Sea countries in Horizon 2020 are German university and research organizations, followed by Sweden and then by Denmark, Finland, Poland and Norway. We have some special things which you can see. There's a slightly higher cooperation among the Baltic Sea states, among the Baltic states. You can see this in the first circle there. And there's also some kind of cooperation between Latvia, Lithuania and Iceland, and Poland is important for these countries. It is a little bit more clearer if you're looking at from the project's perspective. That means you're looking on all projects, for example, we take now Sweden, the second line here. In all Swedish Horizon 2020 projects, you will in 59% of the project you will find a German partner, in 90% you will find a Danish partner, or in 90% you will find a Finnish partner. And then it becomes this, what you just saw in a scene, which you just have seen in lower figures now, and very more obviously this cooperation trend between the Baltic states, the Baltic states, and the speciality also with Poland, and of course Germany as one of the key actors. But all in all, we have to say that in all project partners German organizations, that of all project partners of German organizations are cooperating with, only 15% are coming from the Baltic Sea region, which means there is a lot of room for improvement, at least from the German side. It's a little bit better if you're looking to other BSER countries. There the value ranges from 24 to 29%. But that shows pretty clear these two figures that there is a need for more transnational collaboration within the Baltic Sea, even if we also always think that there is already a lot of things existing, but the reality shows us that there is something, some room for improvement and something we have to do for that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your intervention. I think it clearly showed that things are happening, but they could be improved, and there is room for improvement. Now I would like to invite panelists to take their seats on the stage. And while you are coming, I wanted to ask you all, and feel free who replies first, were there any surprises? If you look into facts and figures, into the trends? Yes, please.
I have the mic, so I'll start. So I would say, having done some work for public policymakers in the region and in the EU in general, I would say it didn't surprise me too much. I just wanted to comment that usually when we talk about mobility of researchers and mobility in general, so I would say mobility of on school level, teachers, pupils, it's always of high interest for the policymakers, because it's one of these elements that can bring potentially very, very high results, and we need to understand what's happening. But as Katariina presented, data is really a problem. When we did our analysis of mobility funded by Nordforska and Nordplus programs, that data was a problem as well. So that didn't surprise me. The same as mobility between neighboring countries, or east-west, south-north. That was all okay. What surprised me a little bit was the selection of the countries that were highlighted: USA, UK, Switzerland and Ukraine. Switzerland surprised me, but I might be missing some background information here. My gut feeling is that we're talking about research mobility to industry. Then I can see that Switzerland is a very attractive location. We have quite a few multinational corporations in different scientific fields, and a couple of facilities that could attract and do attract international researchers. So Switzerland for me was a surprise.
Okay. Anyone else, please? Riitta, I think.
Yeah. No, there were not any surprises. I would think also that would like to emphasize that the data is the essential. One has to be very careful when do any interpretation based on the data in general, because it's if one looks only results of one funding instrument, for example, mobility instrument, one has to remember that there might be other funding agencies, there can be other funding instruments which are used, the project funding, which mobility takes place within the project, not really funding instrument for mobility. And also a lot of mobility takes place so that the host institution in other country invites the scientist. So in order to have the whole picture, it's very, very challenging. But I think that this is one of the reasons why we in Baltic Sea region should work, that we could get more data and more information in this topic.
Thanks a lot for this mentioning, because I think it reflects again what already said Klaus earlier in his intervention, that and Katariina also highlighted about this comparative data. Do we have it? Can we have it? And this also certainly says it is a challenge yet and should be addressed. Anyone else? Anders?
Yes, well, I think also the figures shows very much what we could expect. I think this is the start point now, the challenges that we need to address, the imbalance in the mobility in the region, and where we see that we need to integrate more of the Baltic countries, for example, Poland, in this joint cooperation. I also agree with you about the statistics. I can mention that in the Baltic Sea Strategy we will look into the targets and indicators and see also if we can get some support in the region also now to have a monitoring of some figures, because certainly it is difficult now to find relevant figures for measuring what we would like to see. So I hope we can also support with that to this flagship.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. My question, maybe Riitta, to you is, why do you say it's important part of the project, as you are also a project partner? No, it's not.
No, it's on. So, as we know, Baltic Sea region, it might be quite heterogeneous what comes to performing in research and innovation. So we have countries like Germany, Sweden, maybe Finland also, which are performing quite well in research and innovation. But then there are countries who are not yet there. So I think that in order to promote and facilitate mobility, we need more information. One issue is that these countries who are performing well, we probably not are aware of all that potential what is there. And on the other hand, those countries which may benefit more of mobility and which there might be or even brain drain, like Latvia and Lithuania. It's of course important for them, but on the other hand, there is definitively room of work. So I guess that this topic on mobility and transnational cooperation is worth working more.
Thanks a lot. Jelena, you have been analyzing mobility. You have been looking into also Nordplus and Nordforsk. What are the motivators for mobility?
I have my notes with me, so I don't mess up with you here on this one. When talking about motivators and bottlenecks, probably some things I'm going to say now are not a surprise, and some were actually quite a surprise for us, so I thought you'll find them interesting as well. So when we talk about motivators, I think it's important for us to remember different stages of researchers' career, because the motivators will be slightly different. And it's important to keep this in mind when designing policy instruments and programs. Regardless of the group, it's very much about personal capacity buildings. Researchers want to go abroad to see new methods, new approaches to research, meet colleagues, enhance their CV, you name it. It's all about personal development. So that's not a very big surprise. When you look at the younger researcher group, very often people want to go away because they want to be less dependent on their senior colleagues within their home institution. And that's something which I think is, when you think about it, we probably all have gone through that, but we wouldn't sometimes consider it as a motivator. But it is actually one of the strongest motivators for early stage researchers to try to go away, even for a short time. Another element, researchers feel that when they go away, they get freedom from their everyday commitments at the home institution. They just want to be alone for a month, 3 months, half a year to focus on their research. So that's this personal space, and you can think in the PhD world that will be schools where students go away to write their thesis. So researchers also need this personal space. Another factor that works as a motivator is actually unstable position within the home institution. So if the researchers, regardless of the career stage, feel that somehow their position is unstable, they will obviously look around and see what's happening in other places. And also internal politics with their home institutions. So if they feel that the leadership and management of their department, of their university, is not what they feel is the right one or in line with the international trends, researchers would use it as a motivator to actually be mobile.
Thanks.
Do you want me to talk about problems? Bottlenecks?
I think we stay now with motivators because it is also what motivates you and what is precondition for the mobility. I think that's very important to keep in mind. I thought that maybe now it's time, would any one of you would like to comment, but very, very short. Yes, please. Can we get one mic to the gentleman? But very short, please.
Thank you. I'm Lars Rydén. I'm here for the Baltic University program, which is one of the regional programs mentioned. It's a university network. Let me add that we did some research cooperation in the program, and that's mostly the network of universities was the tool for researchers to find partners. I would like to know after this report, perhaps it's written somewhere, how did you conduct the report? And secondly, did you try to put it into the larger context? I mean, after all, very many researchers find partners elsewhere. For example, they go to the United States to take something that we all know. Did you address PhD students or senior researchers, postdoc, which is a very traditional way, moment in your career for traveling? You know, all these basic questions. Did you look into that? Thank you very much.
So, thanks a lot for your concise question. Klaus or Katariina, would you like to answer? Because I think you are standing strongest behind the study.
Actually, the numbers we presented, at least about mobility, it was a pre-study. We tasked a researcher from German University, from University of Kiel, to have a look first as the first step. It is not really a study, it's a pre-study to have a look what kind of database are actually existing about mobility in the different state. He was looking country by country, what kind of data is available, and in a second step he was trying to have a look if this data is somehow comparable. And the outcome was it is wholly difficult. And actually the only, as far as I remember, the only real data which were comparable were the Marie Curie program, where you had all the countries in and where you have some kind of common ground and common indicators in order to compare really the figures which you have. And this is of course, this was one program. The other one was, I think, in Erasmus. You could also get some of the figures out of it, but then there is a difference between incoming and outgoing data. Incoming is much better counted than outgoing mobility. So there are some obstacles, we have to say.
I believe there can be a question in the audience, at least there is the one from my side. Would the outcomes of the study be available for those who are interested in? I believe for the network, sure, but for others?
Yeah, it will be. We will put that clearly saying it is only a pre-study, it is not a real policy paper that we have to make clear, but I guess we will put it on our website, yes.
So Baltic Science Network is having its own website, or will have it soon? Oh yeah, sorry. So please go there and look for the...
Maybe you wait one day or two.
By the way, I know from the colleagues that tomorrow there will be more thorough discussion on the matters in the Baltic Science Network. So that's why we are just doing very short stop. Take into account that our time is very fast and too fast maybe running. Let me address one question to Anders, because this is a flagship under the Baltic Sea Strategy. How project contributes to what you plan to achieve within the strategy, within your policy, your led policy area? How policy area can help the project and this policy network?
Thank you for the question. Yes. Well, to explain a little bit what the policy area coordinators are doing, you can say that one input for us is the challenges that we heard about yesterday, societal challenges, trends like migration, demography, etc. We have the strategies, we have EU 2020, we have the macro-regional strategies, and as you know, in these macro-regional strategies we don't have any own funding, so the way how we work and implement and how to say, address these challenges is through flagships. And flagships for us, they are development processes where we integrate different perspectives, we integrate different actors working together. And certainly the projects are very important, essential parts of this. And we very often use what we call project chains, where we build the projects together. And this is one example where we start with a project, but we also have flagships where we start to gather the organizations and start to work with them, and then the projects are coming later. But you can say that what we try to be is a little bit to sit in a helicopter, to be able to see these strategies and the trends and see how we can invite stakeholders to work together, and then to be the organization or persons that are supporting them in finding the right partners for them, finding the right financing for them. So it's a bit a support structure that we have when the flagships have started. It was a long answer, but maybe helps a little bit to also explain what we do as policy area coordinators.
Thanks a lot. My one other question that comes in mind is about, you think about mobility, you think about transnational cooperation. It's such a broad topic to be addressed in such a short time. Is there anything very shortly that you would still like to highlight? Because we are unfortunately moving towards closing this part. Yes, please, Anders.
Well, I think that we should look at mobility in a strategic way. And I also would say that we should look at it when it comes to the other parts of these flagships, that we need to have access to research capacity in the region. And we need to work better together. We have a lot of good infrastructure that can work much better together than we do today. We have a lot of students and researchers that would like to visit the neighboring countries, but we should do it in a strategic way. Maybe we need to focus on areas where we have a strength in the region, where we can see that we can work better together, and where we also then should support the mobility, not just to have a mobility anywhere, but try to target it between universities, between research infrastructures that we really need to build closer together. So I think mobility should be used strategically, and I think it's possible. I mean, certainly students have a choice, they want to go somewhere, but I mean, it's also possible to market the options that might be very interesting for them to work in the region.
Riitta.
Yes, and I really agree what you said, and also we heard already that how mobility and transnational cooperation can benefit individuals, what are the motivators and so on. But we need to remember that mobility also benefits host institutions. If we think about the support of strategic choices and to reshaping the strategies of host institutions, mobility can help in this, definitively.
Jelena.
In my work, I like to link things together. So I'm going to bring, I'm going to drop high from the education. So I think when we think about mobility, we need to think about mobility at different stages of life. So we need to start with mobility of pupils in school, maybe kindergarten too early, and then move to the researchers. Why am I trying to link that? That partly could be one of the small solutions for the brain drain. If mobility becomes a normal way of life in the region, where people move around for work and studies, then once the school and high secondary school pupils know that they can go away for 3 weeks or for 1 month from Lithuania to Sweden, then come back, try some new mechanisms, then when they go to the university and then move as researchers, it will be for them a norm of life, and then it will be much higher likelihood that these people will come back or move around, and we will get people from other countries. So I really think that in the policy making, we need to think about mobility as a much wider topic and not forget about different elements of that.
Thanks a lot. Maybe my question to Klaus would be, and what we heard during this I would say already 2 days, is how to ensure, and you are aiming to establish a political network, how to ensure that what network develops is then implemented on the ground in the countries and is benefiting microregion. How do you see it?
This is an extremely important question, actually, because we not only want to talk, we really want to change something, and that means we need implementation on regional and national level in the end of the day. I guess if you have a look on the Baltic Sea region, there is no binding body which has the political power to make binding decisions for the nations or for the regions. You have CBSS, which is an intergovernmental organization, and then you have the EUSBSR Strategy, which has no institution, no money, no institution, no money, and there was a certain no
Regulations.
no legislation. Yeah, of course. So in the end, it's all a question of voluntary implementation by the regions and by the member states, and that was actually the reason why we implemented, or why we put the political decision makers already from the beginning, from the first stage, into the Baltic Science Network, because we were thinking, if they are developing the ideas, if they are developing the instruments, then the chance that they are willing to implement also their own tools, which they have developed themselves, is much higher than somebody external is doing that. That is the one thing, and the second thing is, of course, money. Money is the other option, how you can improve the situation, and you are, at this stage, you are also back on the ministerial level and saying, okay, we may, or we might have a common pot from which we can finance some kind of transnational, or some types of more closer transnational collaboration in research and science.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to hear that you have already involvement of politicians. I wish you all the best also to keep it throughout the network, not only the project that you are now starting, but throughout the network. There was one hand raised. Would you like to place the question? Then you have... Yeah. Please be very short.
Yes, one question. How do you evaluate or measure the effects, the results of your project? And how do you make clear if you see there a change, perhaps in the number of persons, of researchers traveling? If you see there a change, how make you clear that this change is coming from your project and not from other factors?
Would anyone like to answer this challenging question? You can try.
Then you can continue. So one aim of this network is to develop mobility tools, and maybe even look what kind of funding instrument or funding tools we can have. And of course, if we are able to do that, that would be wonderful. And that we can measure, we can follow, we can easily find the indicators and follow.
Klaus, you wanted to add something? Please put it on. Just try.
Same, yeah. Okay, the same thing is with all the different work packages. We are just in the beginning. We first have to develop. For example, if we are talking about joint strategy making in research, we will find out, we make now a basic study, and we will try to identify the research area where most of the countries from the region has a common interest in. For example, material science or whatever, bioenergy or whatever. We will see what will come out. And then we would like to encourage the institutions who are involved in this area to stand up and to form transnational strategies for their specific research area. And you can measure this by seeing if such a strategy is there or not in place after 3 years. And afterwards, of course, the next step would be to apply with this joint strategy for more research funding by the EU institutions or other donators.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Anders, would you like to?
I just wanted to say that.
Now you see there is something happening.
Now it's working. Yeah, it works. I just wanted to say, I think it's a very important question, and that's why I also mentioned this, that we will look into the targets and indicators in the strategy, because certainly we can't just work with the number of mobility. And I think that is also very good what Klaus mentioned. It can be strategies instead. Have they initiated the strategy on the national level or regional level? So we need to look at the right targets and indicators.
Yes, Jelena. It's on.
As an evaluator of many programs, when we talk about impact assessment, just make sure you don't assess it 1 year after your project ends. For impact, you need a couple of years, and I suspect one of the impacts of mobility actions will be a different type of collaborations. So apart from the statistics that we saw, so perhaps partners from different countries, different type of publications and different type of journals, that will be probably the straightforward indicators, but we cannot expect them to materialize 1 year after the project. So I think everybody needs to be aware of that and live with that.
Thanks a lot. I think also what has been mentioned, maybe it's not only to assess what this project achieves. I know it's very interesting to look what exactly this one does, but maybe we need to look at macro-regional level, because we work for a bigger change that cannot be achieved just by one time taken action. This is my conclusion after a few years of being around in the macro-regional cooperation. Let me close, because we are already a bit over the time. Let me close this very short discussion, sorry for having it so short, with asking a question to the panelists with a very short answer, I hope, from your side. Are you convinced that we need macro-regional cooperation? Mic is off.
Okay, of course, because together we are stronger.
Yes.
Yes, because the societal challenges calls for more cooperation.
Absolutely, because only through your own exposure to different culture and environment we can change the environment we operate in.
Thanks a lot to all of you who were here. Looking forward to hear about the network, about the achievements in the nearest future. Thanks a lot to speakers, to organizers, to you who were in the audience, and enjoy the rest of the day. One more panel to come. Thanks.